Three, two, one, go.
Good evening, Jai Vasu. Before we begin this series, I would like to wish you all a happy Ugadi, and I want to welcome Shama Garu for this series 3. So Shama Garu will going to start this series, Who Am I Today? But before we begin, there are 2 series which have been completed and you can watch on YouTube. So the series she completed or we sponsor so far is the Search for Happiness, whether God exists or not. So I will hand over to Shamagaru. Shamagaru, all yours. And this is an interactive session. Once again, I wish you all a happy Ugadi and welcome you all. Shamagaru.
Hello everyone, welcome to week 3 session. And first of all, thank you everyone for patiently waiting even though we had technical difficulties. So thank you and sorry for the delay. So we'll start with the prayers as usual. So Om Ajnanatimirandasya ज्ञानाञ्जनाशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन्निति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. Thank you everyone for joining for today's session. So this is week 3 session and we have completed 2 weeks. The first week was about search for happiness and week 2 was on does God really exist. So today's session, I would not be doing the recap in consideration with the time. So we are short of time. So let me start with the week 3 session, which is the most important session of all these 5 sessions. Because this is the one is the basis for us to understand, uh, you know, only when we know who am I and know anything about that soul, then only we can understand any further instruction in this into in achieving our spiritual success. So let me please let me know if you can see my screen. I'm sharing my screen. You can just raise your hand. And let's make this session also interactive session. Thank you for your response. So the contents which I would be covering today in the science of soul would be whether I am a matter or I am a spirit soul, and what are the 6 changes a living entity undergoes when they are when they are in their process of living. And third one would be the proofs. Anything we want to believe, we need proofs for it. For that to happen, like we need those proofs. So there will be scientific proofs for existence of an anti-material personality. And then what is the mechanism of reincarnation, and what is the difference between the soul and God, and what are the benefits, the practical benefits. We know all this knowledge, but how to practically implement all that in our everyday life. That would be the last topic for today. So as we all know, we would have this question anytime when we introspectively think about ourselves, like who we are in actuality, like who we are. So if someone asks you this question, like who are you? So what would you answer? Please type in your answers in the chat box. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your reply. So, um, so whenever anybody asks, we would say like the name and which place we are from, or the religion, or the caste, or even the nationality, whether we are Indian or Japanese or Chinese or American. We just say a nationality. That's how we identify ourselves when anyone asks, "Who are you?" But in actuality, all these identities, over time, these change. These are not like the permanent. This is not the real identity. For example, let's take the example of name. So does name change over time? Yes, many of us change their name. And then even after women get married, they usually change their name. They add their husband's name or the family name, whatever comes in, and then they change their name. For example, next, the nationality. Nationality, yes. Most of us who come to USA, we want the nationality to change and we want to become a citizen of US. So that way, even nationality over time, it changes. It's not the same. But there is something which does not change over a period of time. That is the real knowledge which we need to achieve, and we need to try to understand who we are really from the inner real identity, which will not change over time. So let's discuss about that in the further slide. So here, if you see, Dr. Harry Monson is a professor of anatomy in Illinois College. According to him, he mentioned that he performed several researches, and he concluded that this human body is made up of certain, maximum amount it's made up of water, and the remaining it's made up of like calcium, phosphate, potassium, sulfur, iron, and copper and iodine. And he concludes that human body is a bunch of chemicals put together. And he concluded that this human body is worth about $1.47 because it contains only calcium, iron, phosphorus, water content, and other substances. That's what he concluded saying about the human body. But do you think this is right? The way it has been projected that human body is only worth $1.47. We do not have any other identity, inner identity. We do have. We should, utilize this human life to, have that deeper introspective thinking that who we are. What is our real identity? What is that one which doesn't change over time? For example, to understand Dr. Harry Monson's way of explanation about human body, let's take an example. This is a story which happened. So there was a friend who bought a new, maybe an expensive car, Tesla car, which is about $100,000. So then he had got it and he wanted to show his close friend. So he had he took the car from the showroom and he immediately went to his friend to show that car. And then eventually his friend was like very happy that he got the car. But then he realized that he wanted to drive that car and see how it is. So then the person who bought the car was kind of hesitant because it's a brand new car which he got from showroom. But his friend is asking, which he could not deny as well because he was his best friend. He could not deny that. And then he just gave the keys and he told, yes, you can go for a drive. And then that person, the friend, took the car and he just, because it was new, he just really took it. He reversed the car in such a speed that all of a sudden there was a black truck which came and just crashed the car. And then this person was really in a shock. He just ran to the side and saw his friend severely injured and the car completely damaged. So according to Harry Monson's principle, this human body is made up of chemicals, right? So if you were in that situation, would you save the car? You would take it to the garage or the auto shop, or would you want to save the friend? Please type in your answers in the chat box. What would you do in that situation? Excellent. Yes, definitely we would want to save the friend because he is not just worth $1.47. It is worth more than that because he is our friend. We don't, value a car with a friend, right? So by this, we can understand there is something within the human body which is more valuable and which is the real identity. And let's try to discuss more about this. So once a grandmother wanted to explain to the grandchild about the importance of life. So because she was a grandchild, the grandmother used an example of a pencil. And then she explained the grandchild about that, saying that, let's compare the life with this pencil. So she told the pencil's essence would come out from within. Means that the pencil's value is based upon the lead which is present within. And it's not been decided, the color of the lead is not being decided by the outer covering which the pencil has, whether it may be prettier, it may have a lot of handwork on that, whatever, but in the inside the lead is the one which decides the color. That's the real essence for the pencil to be written. We use it for writing, so the lead is the part which helps in writing. Similarly, in our life, we have something within us which, when comes out, is the most essential part for our life to progress. And second, the grandmother was mentioning to the grandchild that the pencil, when it undergoes sharpening, with so much of pain it undergoes, but that's how it becomes more effective, right? It sharpens. That's how we can use it properly. Similarly, when this human body or our life, when we undergo certain discipline or certain process, that's how our real identity would come out. And the third thing she told about is the pencil, once we write, we can erase it back, right? In the pencil, that's the advantage. Similarly, in our life, we would have one or many chances to, get back and correct our mistakes. So we should utilize that. And the last and the fourth thing, what the grandmother mentioned was this pencil, when it is present in the right hand, then we can, the maximum utilization of the pencil would come out. Similarly, when we are put in the right hands, then we will be utilized, and the purpose of this human life will also be utilized in similar way. So now in this picture, you see a beauty queen, right? So this beauty queen has all kind of expression. She has the beauty, but when she left her body, it still has the same chemicals which Harry Munson had mentioned, but there is something which is missing. Those are these emotions, the feeling, thinking, desires, movement, and consciousness. So it's the same body, the same chemicals, but the consciousness within the body is missing. the soul is gone out of the body. Let's understand first what is death. We always do not want to, we don't, no one wants death, because it's a scary word, death. Okay, let's try to, analyze it. So if how much ever you love a person and how much ever you're dear to a person, if the person is dead, we would call them a dead body. We don't address them with the name, right? Whether it may be our grandparents or parents or someone in our family or in relative, if the soul leaves the body, we would consider that as a body. We don't anymore address them with the name. So that is the real identity. The soul is the one we address, but we see everything towards projected towards the outside body. We consider that outside body is everything about that person. And when a dear ones, pass away, do we still, hang on to that dead body saying that this is my loved ones, I cannot, bury or burn them? No, we have to undergo, they have to undergo that process, because the soul has gone, because the consciousness within the body is gone out of the body, and that active force which comes from the soul is also out of the body. That's the reason they have no emotions and no movement. That's why they're considered as dead body. So let's try to understand where this energy is coming from body. So this energy, we have seen many medical advancement nowadays. In medical advancement, they say like transplant can be done, kidney transplant can be done, and many organ transplants are going on. Did we any time hear that the consciousness can be transplanted? No, we have to deeply think. The consciousness can be never transplanted. It is within the body. So when we understand there is a difference between the human body and the soul, that's when we are in the beginning step to understand the real identity of ourselves, and we consider ourselves that we are not this body and we are the soul. We know that concept now, body and the soul. We are hearing it, we are trying to understand, but how can we realize it? Just knowing theoretically, it won't help us in advancing, right? So how can we know it? How can we apply that theory? And how can we realize it? Let's see some more examples so that we may get clear with the concepts. So if a car, if you see a car going on the road, what do you feel like? What do you immediately see? How the car is going? It's because the car is driven by a driver inside. We can compare a car to a human body. Only when a driver is within the car can be driven. Similarly, if a soul is present within the body, which is the driver of the human body, then there is the meaning for the human body. It can move, or it can have that consciousness. Similarly, when you see there are two headlights, which are like, we can interpret that as the eyes of the human body. And cars, you use the horn, cars talk in such language, you can say. And similarly, we use our mouth to talk. And car needs the radiator, and that's how it supplies water and the gas, it needs even gas. So that's how it mobilizes and it moves. Similarly, our heart gets blood, and that's how a human body functions. And cars, have four wheels to move, locomotion. And similarly, we have the hands and legs, which are body parts which help us to move. But if there is no driver in the car cannot move even an inch. Similarly, if there is no soul, within this body cannot move or budge out from its place. These concepts, we can understand that there is human body, which is different from the soul. So have something within us, which is the real identity, the soul. Krishna gave this instruction in Bhagavad Gita in the second chapter. This is the very first instruction which Krishna had mentioned to Arjuna, saying that you are not this body, you are the spirit soul. So this is so important because this is the basic concept. That's why Krishna had given us the first instruction, because only when we understand that we are not this body and we are the soul, only then we can understand the rest of the 700 verses given in the Gita. And he mentioned a verse in the second chapter about the soul. Na jayate mriyate va kadachin, which means for the soul there is neither birth nor death at any time. The soul is neither, it is not having a birth. It cannot, we cannot say like this soul is born now, or even after death you can see it wandering. It may be anywhere. It can be in different planets after the death of the person. Nayam bhutva bhavita na bhuyah, which means he has not come into being and does not come into being and will not come into being. Ajo nityam shashvatoyam purano na hanyate hanyamane sharire. So he is unborn, ever existing, eternal and primeval, and he is not slain when the body is slain. So when the body is burned, he is not burned along with the body. The soul is something which comes out of the body, and only the body is buried or cremated. So now that we understand there is something body and there is a different element, which is the soul, which is the real identity. So how can we understand in depth about each one? So the body, we saw that soul does not change over time and that remains the same. But if you see every living entity in this world, like either it be an animal or human or a tree or a reptile, any living organism for that matter, it undergoes 6 changes. It'll birth, that's when they're born, and then it grows as the growth, and then it tries to sustain, in this world, that is the maintenance, and then procreation, they produce their byproducts, and then they dwindle, the old age, and then finally they go to the stage of death. So every living entity undergoes these 6 changes and finally, end up in the death. These changes are only for the human body. These changes are not for the soul. So, but the soul just remains the same. It passes from the childhood to boyhood to adulthood and then old age and death. And it goes away from one body and it goes to another body. The soul remains the same. And the size of the soul also remains the same at every level. Only the outer covering of the human body changes. So, it is mentioned in the scriptures that the size of the soul is measured like, if you take a tip of a hair, the tip of the hair, and you cut that into 100 pieces, and then in that 100 piece you pick one out of it, and then again you cut into 100 pieces, that small is the soul size, which means it's 1 by 10,000 tip of the hair. That's small. Some may ask, only if I see the soul, I can believe there is soul. How can we understand this? We cannot say that we want to see the soul. I can explain you why I am saying this. Because understanding a soul itself is a science. For example, in science, if you want to know about any kind of experiment, you have to undergo those process to complete that experiment and understand its results. Similarly, to understand the science of soul, you have to undergo certain processes. Can we say that we can see oil in the seeds directly in the oil seeds? No, we cannot say that, because the oil seeds have to undergo certain process in order to oil to be extracted. That's when we can find the oil. And we can even take the example of jaggery. How is jaggery processed? It doesn't come directly from the plant. The sugar cane undergoes several processes, and then you get the result as jaggery. Similarly, for us to see the soul, this human body has to undergo certain type of processes, and that's how we can understand the science behind the soul. Now that we saw certain differences between the body and the soul, we'll see few more, like how can we differentiate it. The body is made up of the matter, like how Dr. Harry Munson had said, like it only contains water, calcium, all that are matter. So he had seen the human body only from the matter point of view, but he couldn't recognize the spirit within the human body. So the soul is spirit, it's ever living. And then the body without the soul, just the body does not have consciousness by itself. But the soul, when it is present, it is the consciousness. For example, if you pinch in any part of the body, you feel the pain, If you pinch even the tip of the finger, you can feel the pain. That's because of the presence of consciousness throughout your body. But if you go pinch in a dead body or a non-living thing, do you think it will react? No, because there is no consciousness. That in this way also we can understand the existence of soul. And then the body undergoes those 6 changes. The soul never changes. It is eternal. It does not change. And the body is temporary, because they keep changing the bodies. And then soul is eternal. The body is dead, but the soul is the one which makes us alive. So now that we saw the difference between a body and the soul, and how can we analyze like what we are doing to our body and what we can do to improve, So let's take a story. In this picture, you see an old lady who is Mary. So she was fond of a parrot. So she got a parrot, and it was very sweet. It used to, talk whatever you say, it would repeat. So that's how that parrot was. So she took it home and she started taking care of the parrot. And then finally, and one day she thought, okay, let me, get some kind of cage for the parrot, because it also needs kind of, protection and kind of, it can feel its home, right? So then she got a cage and she put the parrot in the cage. And the cage was golden cage. She wanted to do really nice because she was in love with that parrot. So then she bought a golden cage and she put the parrot, and then eventually she started taking care of the cage. She started cleaning every day, because as she cleaned, it became more shinier. The gold started giving its luster. So she started brooming it, cleaning it, taking care of the cage very nicely. But eventually she forgot to take care of the parrot, and the parrot was screaming every day, please give me some food, I would die otherwise. But she didn't respond, and finally the parrot left his body. So this is how even we are trying to take care of our external body, because we are so attached to this body. So all these advanced technologies we use, and we use a lot of laser technologies, we want to remain young, and we do a lot of cosmetic things, so for us to take care of the body. But any time in our life, have we thought of taking care of our soul within us? Do we take care of that? No. We should identify ourselves from the soul point of view and start realizing and taking care of the soul. So taking care of the soul, and how the practical tips I would give you in the 5th session, what we can do. Now let's see how our human body is. So how many bodies do you think we have? Can anybody guess? Scriptures say like we have certain number of bodies. Do anybody know like how many bodies we have? Please type in your answers in the chat box. Let's make it interactive. 1. Okay. 1. Thank you. Thank you for your responses. Good. So, yes, when you see externally, we do have one body. But scriptures say that we have 3 bodies in the form of layers. So the first outer layer is the gross element. It's made up of gross elements. How can we understand in a simple way is like, for example, take a hand. Imagine we have a latex gloves upon it, and then we have a tennis gloves upon it. So we have like 3. So the outer tennis gloves is considered as the one made up of the gross elements. That first layer of the body or the first body is made up of gross elements that contains earth, water, fire, air, and ether. So that's why we have a process of cremation, like either we burn or we bury, because these gross elements from the dead body gets unmanifested, and it just goes into its own elements. And the next, the latex gloves, maybe the example. So the latex gloves, that is the layer between the external and the interior body. So that is made up of the subtle elements, which is the mind, intelligence, and false ego. I would shortly tell about those properties, what mind, intelligence, and false ego is. And the third and the innermost, that is our hand, that is the spiritual body. So this gross elements and the subtle elements belong to the inferior energy of the Lord, and the spiritual body or the soul is the one which is the superior energy of the God's energy. So this soul it is Sat Chit Ananda, which means the soul never dies, never it comes into existence. It's always present. Whether it leaves this body, it goes into another body, or it will be going back home. So that way it is Sat, always existing. Chit means it's full of knowledge. How can we understand that? For example, if you see like kids, for example, if they're doing one drama or any kind of drama, kids would always want to be Lord Rama, right? We don't say like Rama is good and Ravana is bad. We don't give them that distinction, but still they always want to go towards the right one. They want to become Rama because he is good. So that basic knowledge, the right and wrong, we always carry. That is because of the soul. And then the soul is also full of bliss. We are always full of bliss. That's the reason we always wonder and search for happiness even in this human body. That's why we have that urge, and we always want to live because of the nature of eternal nature of the soul. Now let's jump into the subtle elements. So mind, intelligence, and false ego. How can we understand this? Let's take an example of a computer maybe. So let's consider the mind as the hardware part, and the intelligence as the CPU, the central processing unit, and the false ego as the software. So the mind is the one which you can see, you can analyze. So for example, if you see I won't say example, the mind is the reservoir of thoughts and experiences, and it's the storage house of all the interpretation which we carry throughout the life. That's what mind. And the mind is the one which tells you, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this, because it's filled with desires within it. And the intelligence is like the processing unit. The mind says you do this, but the intelligence is the one which helps us to discriminate whether it's right or wrong. And then it is the one which helps us to distinguish everything. based upon the intelligence, when we start working based upon intelligence, that's how we can progress. Next, the false ego. This is like a thin layer, and this false ego is the one, which we cannot see, like the software. But the false ego is the one which actually attaches this gross body to this soul. It's like a Fevicol, we could say that way. So that's the one which helps the gross elements to stick onto the soul. And because of this false ego, we always say, I am, this is mine, because of that nature, we think we are this body and we consider everything as ours. So let's next jump into a schematic diagram of what I said, like the 3 layers, the outer covering, which is made up of the gross elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether. And next, it's the subtle body, which is made up of the mind, intelligence, and false ego. And the innermost, which is the soul, which is Sat Chit Ananda. So every time we try to understand a concept, before we accept, we would want some kind of proof. We want, if there is a fact, we need, what's the proof for that? So these are few proofs, like which is like the common. First one would be the common sense understanding, or we could say like how we can analyze there is existence of soul. In this, you see a machine which says, I see red light. So in real experience, can the machine itself see the red light? Can it think? Does it have that intention or those kind of feelings? No, it's only the response which we had put mechanically into. We just fed that response into that machine. So certain point of time, this should pop up. That's how it appears, like I see red light. But the humans are the ones who have all kinds of thinking capacity, feelings, willing, and they know what's right and wrong. That's because of the presence of the soul. Next, why do we say, like, if someone, dies, what do we say? The person passed away. But still the person is lying in front of us. Then why do we say that he passed away? What do you mean by passed away? Or he left the body. What left the body? So we address them not as the body. We address them as the soul. We say that the soul has passed away. The soul has left the body. That's how we interpret. And now let's jump into the scientific proof. How can we understand about the soul even more clear, with facts? So there are two ways of researchers which had taken place. One is the near to death experience, and other one is out of body experience. So the near to death experience is given by Michael Sabom, who is actually a cardiologist in the Emory University. He has done several cardiologistic surgeries. So once there was a patient who came in for a heart surgery. So that time, Dr. Sabam had told, he had taken him to operation theater. He started performing the surgery. And eventually, the person left his body, and the ECG and EEG, everything was in a straight line. But after doing the CPR and certain procedure, the cardiologist could revive the person back to life. So within that span, that patient who was on the bed his soul had left the body and wandering in that room and seeing what these doctors were talking and what they were discussing and what procedures they were doing. So once this person had come back to life and all the surgery was done and he was out of the operation theater, when he met the doctor, he told, I know what happened inside the operation theater. And Dr. Sebam was like, how can you know? You were like unconscious. How can you say that you saw? And he started describing each and every step what they did. what they spoke. And Dr. Sebum was like shocked. How can he just tell what happened inside the operation theater when he was not unconscious? And then he started questioning. And then he was very clearly explaining as if he saw everything, you know. And then Michael Sebum started conversing with that person and came to understand that his soul had left the body in that span of time. That's how he could see what's happening. And then, due to their surgery, due to their life-saving acts, the soul had come back, and that's how, when he came into the body, he could explain everything. This is not just one case we hear, but there are several cases. If you see in today's research, a lot of near to death experience researches are going on, and if you talk to many doctors, you can hear more about this. And then out of body experience. So what do you mean by out of body experience? See, some try, this is kind of, they hallucinate a person, and then before hallucination they give that person instruction, and then after hallucination they repeat that instruction and tell them, like, you have to go to that particular place and you have to perform this particular act, and then you have to come back. So that's how they do with the hallucination persons. And then so such researches also happen. And once there was a person who hallucinated a doctor has hallucinated another person, and he told, you have to go to this particular spot and see there, whatever you see there, you have to come back and draw it and show it to us. So then once he was out of hallucination, he started drawing and he showed everything. So it was exactly the same what he had told to that person, to go to that particular spot and see and draw. So there is something, even though the body was here, but there was the soul which was traveling and which came back. So this also proves that there is soul and existence of soul and presence of body. And this is another, we would have come across this in our life, like people telling that I remember what happened in my previous life. So that is reincarnation. So Ian Stevenson is a famous professor, psychiatrics professor in University of Virginia, who has investigated thousands of cases upon this reincarnation. So let's take one of that case study which he had used. There are several cases. So one of it is Shukla, about Shukla. Shukla was a 5-year-old girl who used to live in Maharashtra. So at that age, all of a sudden she started conversing in a different language to her parents, and then she started talking that I want to go see my father-in-law, I want to go see my son, and parents were really in shock. What's wrong with her? Why is she talking? So they just ignored, because she's a small girl. Sometimes they may see different dramas, or they would hear stories. That's how maybe she's just interpreting wrong things. Then she repeatedly and forcefully started telling her parents, this is the thing, this is the thing. And their parents were like in a shock. And then they met one of their relative and told about this, like, my daughter is repeatedly telling about certain people. We don't even know who they are, and we have never met them. And then that person tells, I think you should go meet Ian Stevenson. He's a psychiatrist. So that way he had come to by, so you can go meet. So that's how Shukla's parents went and met them, and then there they spoke about this, and Dr. Ian Stevenson could understand that she is having her memories from the past life, because the soul has that nature. It can carry our intentions and desires from the previous life. So then Shukla and the doctor's team and Shukla's family, everybody traveled through train to that particular place where Shukla had mentioned, that is, if you see, Bhatpara there. And then Shukla was taken, and Shukla all of a sudden started telling the station's name, but she's never been out of that area, and she's just 5 years old. But she started telling all the station's name, and the family was really, getting surprised. And then finally, after reaching the station, she just started walking directly, and all the team was just following her. And she was so confidently started bargaining with even the auto rickshaw person, and she told the destination, you have to take me here. And then she just went there, and she got down from the rickshaw, and then she went to the particular house, you know because that was her house in the previous life. And then she started to talk to her father-in-law and all the family members there in that home, and they all were like shocked. How can this 5-year-old girl know our names, and how is this happening? But then she started telling about her son, and then started talking about her family members, and finally she mentioned about her one of the sari which was put in the cupboard, in a suitcase, and secretly kept in a cupboard, which no one else knew, and she told exactly the color of that sari. So this was because she could carry the memories from her previous life. So this also explains these reincarnation incidents. If you hear many more like this, you would think about it, you would introspect about it. There is the existence of soul. So if you want to know more about out of body experiences, there is a book which was published in 1996 in a Reader's Digest, Into the Unknown. So you can get all details from there too. So now we understood about the body and the soul. Now let's see actually what happens at the time of death. So the soul actually leaves the body, and then it takes, it goes to the womb of another body. But how is that decided? At the time of death, whatever desires the mind carries, that is, mind is within the subtle body, whatever that carries, that would decide based on the desire and the activities, what they deserve, both together, that would decide the body which would be attained in the next life. This is described in Bhagavad Gita that how when we just when the clothes are worn out, we remove it, we throw it, and we wear the new clothes. Similarly, the soul, when the body becomes old and worn out, and when the soul feels no, so not necessary, so that time the soul leaves the body and it takes the next body. That is based upon the desire which we have, which the mind carries, as well as what we deserve based upon the activities which we performed in that life, the karma. So now let's have a quiz time. So after hearing so much, so what do you feel? Who are you when we ask this question? Whether you feel you're a mind, soul, body, or intelligence? Please type in your answers in the chat box. Soul. Excellent. Excellent answers. Soul. Yes. We are not this body. We are the soul. Excellent explanation. Yes. So the answer is we are not this body, but we are the soul. There is a difference between body and soul. Let's go to the next question. Do we have life after death? Yes or no? What do you feel? Yes. Excellent. We do have life for the answer which says no. Yes, we do have a life after death, because the soul does not stop its existence, it's ever existing. So what happens is, I would explain you in the next slide what it is. So we have we have the human form, which is the highest in the hierarchy. So let me tell you how many species are there. It is like 8,400,000 species, and among these species, the topmost is the human beings, because it undergoes a cycle. The soul, it undergoes a cycle. It goes from the lower organism, lower living entity, and the highest we reach is the human life. So this human life is the rarest, and that's why we should utilize this human life, not just just to enjoy, but not to engage ourselves in karmic activities, but we should know why we have got this human life, and why what we should do, who are we, and who is God, and what is our relationship between God. So that's how we can get the real essence of this human life. So the soul does not stop its living. Soul is ever existing. Even though it leaves one body, it may take over another body. I think it answers I think now you got the point, Shivakumar, because you had answered no. So next, so let's try to understand. We know the concept of soul and body, and we tried to understand through the proofs. And now some people say, like, when someone leaves the body, they go to God. No, this concept is wrong, because God is one who is the supreme controller. He's never been controlled by anyone else, and he is independent. Can we say that I am not controlled by anybody? I am independent. I can live my own way. I don't depend on anything. No, we cannot say. For everyday life, even for the air, even the air which we breathe, we depend on God, right? We are not independent, and we are controlled. Let me explain this concept through a poem, which says, "We are not gods, but we are gods," which means that we cannot be the God, but we are the servant. We are a part of the God. Like how we can say, like, the hands and the legs are a part of the human body. Similarly, we are part and parcel of the God. So let's have a rhythmic poem, like with the music. I am a tiny jiva, not the ultimate God, but a tiny part and parcel servant of the Lord. So this means that we are not the God, but we are the servant, and we have been given this human life to utilize this and go back to Him, go back to Godhead, where we can attain eternal happiness. I can make a swimming pool, but God creates oceans. I can fly a rocket, but Lord floats huge planets. So this is like self-explanatory. Like, we can only create swimming pools, but God is the one who created oceans all around. I can invent a dome light, but God creates moonlight. We make ordinary dolls, but the Lord made us all. So we can only create like dolls, the artificial dolls. But God is the one who made us all in this universe. Lord is the greatest of all. Let us accept this fact at heart. We are His tiny servants. Let's realize and serve Him with joy. That is our final essence, that we should serve Him with happiness and joy. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. This is the mantra which helps us to, I would explain about this mantra in the later weeks. I don't want to break the suspense now. So now that we saw all that, let's come to the last part of today's session. What is the benefit? Okay, we know this knowledge, body and soul, and we try to realize that we are not this body. But what is the practical benefit? How can we apply this concept in our daily life? Let's see that. In 17th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna had given knowledge about the divine and demoniac nature. So, what is demoniac nature and what is divine nature? All the qualities of different individuals will be described in 17th chapter. So, now here, let's see what this lady is saying. Like, she says that I don't care who thinks about what about me. I just want to enjoy, eat, drink, and be merry. Who cares whether other cry or get fried? As long as I am happy. So this is a thought of a demoniac nature. When they see themselves from the bodily platform and they don't consider themselves from the soul platform, because they want to just enjoy with this body. But one who realizes that, no, I am not this body, I am the soul, their way of thinking would be different. Like, they would think that my actions now will create my good or bad fortune or future. So, let me learn to love all the living beings as God's children. So, I should give up all the negative qualities like yelling, getting angry, arrogant, hurting others. And that's how, we'll have peace of mind. So, here, one who is in the soul level would think that every living entity, no matter it's a small ant or a big elephant, all the living entities around us, all the human beings around us are considered to be God's children. So the next would be like freedom from lamentation and illusion. How is that? Let's see that. So this person thinks that, oh, I'm keeping on failing in my maths exam. I don't know now what will happen. My father will just, will never let me give up, give up my studies. And I think better I can just commit suicide by hanging. That's the way when we start thinking from the bodily platform, because we think that we are just this body and we are just suffering. But no, committing suicide by itself is a sinful reaction, because this body is given by God to us as a gift. So we should utilize this gift to the best of what we can do. So if a person who is thinking from the soul, soul level, they think, no, I'm not this body, I'm the soul, then their attitude would change. They would get that positive attitude, like, I need to take someone's help, so that way I can clear my exams. And that way he will decide whoever is it and he can help me. That way we would start, our intelligence would start thinking in that way. And next, universal brotherhood. Nowadays, we see a lot of war going on and lot of division in religion. This is like, you are Hindu, I am a Muslim, you're a Christian, you're a white, I'm a black, I'm rich, you're poor, I'm illiterate, you are an educated person. So all this kind of differences. But if you see here, you see different sannyasis, whether they are like white, black, Jews, or Germans, or Americans, all are together because they see themselves from the soul platform. They consider themselves as the soul. They all consider themselves as the children of the God. And that's why, that force is driving them to stay together, and they are, really enjoying their life. What else can we achieve? What other benefit we can get is the positive outlook and attitude towards the life. When a person starts thinking at the body level, he would say that, oh, everybody around me is selfish. No one is, kind of cooperating with me. I feel really lonely and depressed, and they would start becoming arrogant. Why should I be nice to others? When they see, because they don't have the real wisdom, real knowledge that they are the child of God, and they are not this body, they are the soul. When they have this concept in their mind that everybody is the children of God, they would stop blaming others, they would start being cooperative. And what would happen if there is a situation which they cannot handle? They would, if someone is treating them bad, they would say, okay, he's also, he's also child of God. So let me try to be tolerant with him. Let me become even more patient. And then consider that way, and you become potentially good when you start thinking from the soul point of view. And next, we achieve, the last one is the meditation, you know, of for peace and happiness. We can achieve this when we start thinking from the soul level. When we start thinking that, oh, I'm looking ugly, I am dark, I am not talented in any of the field, especially like I'm not talented to run a business or run a family, I am poor, I'm failing, all this, only one who is in level of body concept, they would think about this, and they would lose their happiness, and they would suffer in depression. That's how nowadays we have lot of different scenarios in life. But when a person thinks themselves at the soul level, and they think themselves as the, uh, they think themselves as a soul, and they think themselves, this life was gifted to me by God, and I'm God's child, they would develop that love, and, and they would start loving each and everybody, and they'll be tolerant, and then they would not see any kind of defects in them, and they would see only the positive, and that how they will, be happy and prosperous. So let's see what all covered today. So we had gone through like what is matter and what is a spirit soul, and what are the changes in living body, and if there are, or there is a presence of soul and the human body, how can we understand that, and how can we accept through proofs? We saw proofs like common sense thinking passed away, or left the soul left the body, that shows there is a presence of soul. And we saw out of body experience, and near to death experience, and reincarnations, and what is the difference between the soul and the God, who is the supreme God. And if we know this concept of human body and the soul, how can we utilize that in our practical life, and how can we change our life into happy, prosperous, and peaceful life? So we saw that at the end. So thank you, everyone. So there was a question which I would like to address before I take questions in this session, because there was a question from Facebook which was by Raj Victor. He had mentioned that how can the series show there is no wisdom or happiness among people? What is the use of this series? So I would like to address that, because only when you understand the science of the soul, and only when you understand who you are, and what is our relationship with God, and what we are striving for, that's how we can achieve the real wisdom. That is the real knowledge. And that's when we know that, when we get the real knowledge, that's how we can achieve the real happiness. Thank you, everyone. I hand over now back to Srinivas Garu. Thank you.
Thank you,
Looks like
Shyama.
Spurti had a question.
Spurti.
Sure.
Like if we
Nice.
keep on if we keep on taking bodies, then how will we go to God?
Excellent.
Go to God.
Excellent question. Wonderful. So that's why we are going through these sessions, because to break the cycle of life, I mean the birth, death, all these four real problems which we saw in the first day, to stop this cycle, we have to undergo the process of attaining real knowledge, and we have to understand the relationship with God, and we should start developing those desires in our mind. So when we leave the body, when we develop the desire that I want to go back to God, okay, when you develop that desire always, I want to go back to God, that time when you leave the body, you would definitely go back to God. Did it answer?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Shama Garu. I think you have addressed most of our questions. And this is really the interactive session, like, this is really interesting. And like people who are listening, I think they got benefited out of this. So our next session will be on April 5th. So we're going to meet and we're going to continue with this series. So thanks once again for each and everyone who joined.